Cindy Song is a Korean woman who relocated to Virginia from South Korea in 1995. She did so in order to live with her aunt and uncle and pursue education in the United States. After completing high school, she was admitted to Pennsylvania State University, where she pursued a major in integrative arts, a program that blended elements of engineering, communications, and science. By 2001, she was in her senior year and was scheduled to graduate during the spring of 2002. On the 31st of October, 21-year-old Cindy Song decided to have a night off from her studies and celebrate Halloween. Cindy and her friend Stacy Pike and another friend Lisa Kim were set to attend a costume party at Blair's nightclub on College Avenue. Dressed as a bunny in a white tennis skirt, bunny ears, and a tail, she arrived at the party where she met her friends. The trio stayed until 2 a.m. the following morning, when they moved to another friend's apartment to continue the party and play video games. Later that night, at 4 a.m., Cindy was dropped off by her friends outside the Park Apartments on Clinton Avenue, which was her residence. Cindy Song had been drinking that evening and was mildly intoxicated when taken to her apartment. Little did her friends know this would be the final time they saw Cindy. She has never been heard from again. Later that day, Cindy's roommate returned from a family visit and didn't initially worry about her absence. The door to the apartment was locked, and there were no signs of a struggle. However, after 3 days passed without any communication from Cindy, her friends grew increasingly concerned. Song's friends reported her as a missing person when she failed to contact anyone by November 4th. Nearly all of her personal belongings were inside of her residence, including her backpack and the cellular phone she normally carried with her. According to authorities, Cindy definitely reached her apartment that night, as her backpack that she had at the party was present. There was also a set of fake eyelashes that she had worn with her bunny costume. Her phone was still in her backpack. Cindy's keys and her purse containing her credit cards and driver's license were the only items missing from her home. Therefore, it is believed that Cindy went to a nearby 24-hour supermarket in her costume after she had dropped off her things in her apartment. Investigators checked her phone records and no calls were made, and there was no activity on any of her credit cards either. They also read her emails and confirmed there was no suspicious activity there either. There was no indication of a struggle or foul play at her apartment. There were 2 Britney Spears concert tickets set to take place in a couple of days in Philadelphia, and a receipt for a new computer that was due to be delivered on November 6th in Cindy's room. From all accounts, she was happy and excited to continue with her life after she got home from that party. The police didn't believe that she had ran away voluntarily. Song's family traveled from South Korea to the United States after Cindy had vanished. They had cleaned her apartment shortly after the initial police search, inadvertently destroying what physical evidence that might have been left there. Cindy Song did not have any travel plans in November. Her loved ones stated it is uncharacteristic for her to leave without letting anyone know about it. They also maintained that she was not suffering from any personal problems at the time of her disappearance. Police investigated the possibility that Cindy's disappearance was drug-related. This was due because in her diary, entries indicating that she and her friends experimented with marijuana and ecstasy were found. However, there is no evidence that she used drugs on the night of her disappearance, and the drug theory was eventually discarded. Volunteers searched the nearby woods, but there was no trace of Cindy there. Authorities believe that Cindy left her apartment to go to a 24-hour supermarket, something she often did, and that she was abducted there or on the way to the supermarket. Another theory was that she left her apartment with someone that she knew and then was killed by them. Cindy Song had broken up with her boyfriend a month before her disappearance, and her family members speculated that she might have chosen to leave or commit suicide as a result of the breakup, but her roommates told the law enforcement that she was getting over the breakup and was not depressed about it. A few days after Cindy's disappearance, a witness claimed that she saw a woman matching Cindy's description inside a vehicle with an unidentified male in the Philadelphia Chinatown district. The witness said that the woman called for help, but the man interrupted her and told the witness to leave. This happened approximately 200 miles away from where Cindy was last seen. Investigators said that the witness's story changed several times, and they have been unable to verify her statements. Authorities are continuing to attempt to identify the man allegedly seen by the woman. He is described as having an olive or light brown complexion with medium-length hair. Investigators stated that the man is not a suspect in Cindy Song's case, but they still would like to question him. Investigators have stated that they no longer believe the woman calling for help in the Philadelphia's China district was Cindy, because in 2003, police connected Cindy's disappearance to a bank robber and suspected serial killer named Hugo Selenski. An informant by the name of Paul Weekly told police that Hugo and a man named Michael Kerkowski had abducted and killed a woman from State College that matched Cindy's description. The informant led police to the location of 5 bodies in Hugo Selenski's property. However, DNA testing proved that none were Cindy's. One of them was Michael Kerkowski himself. The informant claimed that Cindy was buried on another part of the property. However, they were never able to locate her remains in Hugo Selenski's property. Hugo Selenski and the informant, Paul Weekly, were friends. They were both criminals who had killed Michael Kerkowski and Michael's girlfriend, Tammy Fassett, in order to obtain Michael's money. Michael was Hugo's friend, as well as a pharmacist who was involved in illegal drug distribution, and Hugo extorted money from him and his family after Michael went missing. According to Paul Weekly's testimony, on May 3rd in 2002, Hugo and Paul went to Michael's home in order to rob him, ultimately ending up torturing him, killing him and his girlfriend Tammy. Their bodies were buried in Hugo's backyard. Paul testified against Hugo in 2015, leading to Paul's charges being dropped, but he still remains in prison for unrelated offenses. Authorities believe that the informant Paul is telling the truth regarding Cindy's fate as well, because his information on the other 5 cases turned out to be correct. Hugo Selenski later on confessed to kidnapping Cindy, but claimed that Michael Kerkowski killed her and kept her bunny ears as a souvenir. Hugo told police that he and Michael Kerkowski saw Cindy that night. They mistook her for a prostitute and kidnapped her, then kept her imprisoned in a walk-in safe in Hugo's home until she died. Hugo says they then buried Cindy's body somewhere in Luzerne County in Pennsylvania. Michael Kerkowski could not confirm or deny Hugo Selenski's claims because he was one of the people buried in Hugo's backyard. He was dead. Hugo said he killed his accomplice Michael Kerkowski after learning that he had kept Cindy Song's bunny ears as a souvenir of the crime. This is contradicting Paul Weekly's testimony, where Paul claims that Hugo killed Michael in order to take his money. On the other hand, one of Hugo's friends told police that Hugo had boasted about murdering Cindy by himself. Surprisingly, 2 years later, in 2006, Hugo was acquitted of the murders of 2 drug dealers who were found on his property. He was, however, convicted of abusing their bodies, whatever that means. In January 2014, authorities announced that the badly destroyed remains of 7 other people were found on Hugo's property. This is in addition to the 5 bodies that were found back in 2003. They have looked into the possibility that one of the bodies belonged to Cindy, however, she was not yet being linked to any of them. They also announced that Hugo Selenski's attorney and private investigator were involved in witness intimidation and other crimes relating to his case. Finally, in 2015, he was convicted of the murder of Michael Kharkovsky and his girlfriend Tammy Fassett, who were also found on his property. He was sentenced to life in prison. He is still considered a suspect in Cindy Song's disappearance. However, her body has never been found.
I'm not sure what to say, but all I can say is that Hugo seems to be a huge psychopath.
Hugo Selenski definitely looks like he was an individual you don't want to run into, especially late at night. Regarding this disappearance case, one of the things that kind of jumped out to me first was that it happened on Halloween night, so something that's coming up shortly here as well. So I think when I was looking for a case to, go over, potentially, I thought that this would be a good choice for us to discuss.
Was Hugo rich?
Hugo, I didn't...
From the pictures, it looks like he has a pretty massive house.
That's true. His house does look pretty massive, but you have to take into consideration that he's not really living like in a...
regular person?
No, I'm saying he's not really living in a expensive location, probably, Real estate, it's probably a little bit cheaper there in those Pennsylvania outskirts. I'm not really certain where his house is. I wasn't able to find this information, but that is true. The house does look pretty big. It's like a 3-story building, and he has a pool.
Ginormous pool
In the backyard. From the looks of it, from the picture that we have right now, it seems like law enforcement had already dug up a lot of areas in his property. In total, there were 13 bodies found. 5 bodies found in 2003, and then an additional 7 bodies found in 2015. Among the bodies that were found there were drug dealers and his alleged friend Michael Kharkovsky and Michael's 37-year-old girlfriend Tammy Fassett. I tried to find a little bit more information about this Michael Kharkovsky, because Michael Kharkovsky is also a suspect in Cindy's case, because it is alleged that Michael and Hugo kidnapped Cindy. So Michael Kharkovsky, from what I gather, was just a man who grew up there locally in that Pennsylvania general location, let's put it that way, and he was a pharmacist, and he opened up his own pharmacy store, selling some sort of prescription drugs, and then he was, I think, selling them illegally. He had a doctor who was, I think, prescribing, the restricted drugs, and they were running like some sort of a scam. So from what I gather, Hugo himself was actually very jealous of Michael, because allegedly Hugo thought that Michael had millions stashed in his house. And by the time Hugo went in, well, if we're gonna go with the testimony of Paul Weekly, another friend of Hugo's, Paul and Hugo went originally to Michael's house because they wanted to extort him for money, because Michael at that point was facing criminal charges and was likely set to go to prison anyways. So Hugo decided to extort money from Michael, because he knew of his shady dealings. When they went to Michael's place, they also found Tammy Fassett there. And this was unexpected, but at that point, allegedly, Hugo and Paul already decided that she's gonna be part of this crime as well. So they tied her up, took her upstairs, told her that she's gonna be okay. They only want to take money from Michael. When Michael came home, they kind of ambushed him, tortured him until Michael revealed where he kept $60,000 in his house. Then they strangled him to death, went upstairs and strangled Tammy to death as well. And then they left with the bodies, and they took the bodies and they hid the bodies in Hugo's property. So all I'm gonna say is Paul seems like a very confident man to kind of have all of these bodies laying around in his backyard and still keep committing like criminal activities, because one of the ways that Hugo got caught in the first place was that someone else kind of connected Hugo to a house robbery in the general vicinity. So he was like a career criminal.
Yeah, seems so.
With 11 bodies laying around in his backyard. And he has been detained since 2003, so all of those 11 bodies were put there before 2003. They were only discovered, the rest of them was discovered in 2015. It's a long case. I think another thing I want to kind of mention here is the Chinaman suspect sketch is probably a top 5 most disturbing sketch I've ever seen for me. Like, this is nightmare fuel. Do you see it? Though that sketch? Yes, this one. This is the Chinaman sketch, or I'm not sure. Like, let's say Chinatown sketch, because it hasn't been provided. The information wasn't provided whether or not it was a Chinese man pulling a woman that looked like Cindy into a car, or was it like a Caucasian man? But the massive forehead and those dead eyes and the whole face.
He seems kind of more Caucasian to me.
He does seem kind of Caucasian, but
that massive forehead.
To me, for some reason, this particular sketch, like, it really weirded me out. I'm not gonna lie. This sketch is something that's, I don't know, has to go in our folder of worst, like, or let's say scariest sketches.
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad, right?
I think it resembles Hugo. At least a little bit.
Not really. Hugo looks like he has a more plump face. Hugo himself actually looks like, what's his name? The guy from The Mummy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No. You meant the whale guy, Brendan Fraser?
Whale guy? Why is he the whale guy?
He has a movie. A recent movie where he was a whale. I think the name was Whale or something.
I don't know, from this one image that we have here, he looks literally identical to Brendan Fraser from the Mummy movies.
Younger, yeah.
So for everyone listening here who's not maybe listening to the podcast on the YouTube channel, you could just imagine Brendan Fraser committing, at his prime of criminal activity, you could just imagine Brendan Fraser kidnapping people, murdering them, and stashing them in his backyard.
It's pretty bad.
But his face doesn't fit the profile, I would like to say. Like, you wouldn't expect this man to kind of commit these crimes. Even some media outlets actually named him the Handsome Devil.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's what they call him, the Handsome Devil. I guess media will do anything, right, to get clicks. So, I guess the things that I've noted down for myself that were kind of interest for me personally was mainly the fact that we know that Cindy did reach her apartment, and she did leave her backpack and phone behind, and she is known to keep her phone on herself. That pretty much indicates to me that she left voluntarily, but she left voluntarily with the let's say motive to come back pretty soon.
Yeah.
She didn't leave for a long time. Authorities believe that she left the apartment and was abducted on her way to the 24-hour supermarket. I'm not necessarily certain why they are so why they're pushing towards this theory that she went to the 24-hour supermarket, but apparently she was known to do that, to go there in early morning hours. And then another theory was that she left the apartment with someone that she knew and was killed by that person. However, no such person has ever come forward. So once again, not really certain if we can go off of that. Apparently she left still in her bunny suit, which was pretty weird for me, but also at the same time I kind of understand, since it was the Halloween night. What do you think about that particular detail, that she didn't really dress in normal clothing? She still went in bunny costume.
I mean, it seems pretty normal for me. Like, she's already dressed up, she wanted to buy something for a bit really quickly, go head back and wash up and call it a day.
Yeah, actually I could see myself doing something like that after coming back from anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
Her keys, purse, driving license were the only things that were missing. Well, the things that she probably would have on her when she went to the supermarket. So I think that's pretty normal. 1 month before her disappearance, she had broken up with her boyfriend. I have no more information about this particular detail, so I think that's all we have. The family was at one point suspecting that she may have committed suicide, but her friends said that she was getting over it. It doesn't seem to me at all that this was a case where she committed suicide or ran away, because all of her stuff was still there, credit cards, everything. So to me, this is a clear case of her running into foul play. I have no doubt about that one. And the first sighting of a similar woman to Cindy being abducted, potentially in Philadelphia's Chinatown, is interesting, but at the same time, I don't think it's connected to the case. I like that law enforcement still said that they do want to talk to that man who was, roughing up that I guess Asian-looking woman in Chinatown district in Philadelphia, but I think good luck with that. The guy is definitely not going to come out there. And,
definitely.
How are you going to come out there? And either way, if you're not connected to Cindy Song's case, you're still a shitty dude for roughing up some girl in Chinatown district. Like, you don't want to come out with that information. And then I guess the most damning piece of evidence is that Hugo Selenski actually confessed to killing Cindy, but claimed that Kharkovsky killed her. Either way, this kind of almost feels like, I would say if I had to bet, if I was betting here, I would bet that Hugo Selenski definitely had something to do with Cindy's case.
Oh, definitely.
What are your general, overall conclusion here? What do you think?
Personally, I think it was supposed to be a normal day for innocent Cindy. She went out probably hungry, we just wanted to buy something really quickly, and then there was some unfortunate circumstance wherein Hugo was there or some other bad guys, and yeah, that was it.
That was it? Unfortunately, right, yeah. I don't think we're gonna find actually, sorry for saying that, I think we might find more news eventually. It's just the fact that it's been 22 years that's kind of making me less hopeful. The one thing that I think might lead us to a conclusion, because Hugo is still alive, so he's serving 2 life sentences, but he's still alive, so maybe they will get him to kind of talk somehow.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure he knows where the body is at. I don't know why he didn't. I think maybe it's hard to get him to talk because I think since he's serving a life sentence in prison, I would assume it's this crime wouldn't be viewed as a cool hardcore thing by the other prisoners.
Yeah.
Because you are abducting and killing women, which is a no-go.
And I think what's the point? He's already serving 2 life sentences in prison, so if the police ever managed to extract information from him,
exactly what is there for him to gain.
Yeah,
I think he
exactly.
can only lose. I mean,
Yeah.
he's sitting right now as this kind of robber, gangster guy,
Psycho.
psycho guy who's serving 2 life sentences. Maybe he's like already in the prison system, like up there in terms of credo. I mean, this is all speculation. He could be like a low life there also. I don't know. On March 18th, the year of 2000, joggers on a road near the Mount Baker Highway in Watacom County, Washington, made a disturbing discovery. They spotted a wrecked vehicle at the base of an embankment close to Canyon Creek, a tributary of the North Fork and the Nooksack River. When deputies investigating the incident came across the vehicle, it was a white 1993 Jeep Cherokee with North Carolina license plates. This car was linked to 20-year-old Leah Roberts, who had abruptly left her home in Durham, North Carolina, 9 days earlier. Shortly after the vehicle was located, a man reported a sighting of Leah Roberts at a gas station nearby Everett in Washington, where she appeared disoriented. Despite these developments, her current whereabouts remain unknown. Leah Roberts was born in 1976. She was the youngest of 3 children in a family living in the suburbs of Durham, North Carolina. When she was 17, her father was diagnosed with a chronic lung illness. This put a great deal of strain on the family as Leah Roberts began her studies at North Carolina State University in nearby Raleigh in 1995. When she was 20 years old and a sophomore in college, her mother died suddenly from a heart disease. In the fall of 1998, she returned to her studies after taking some time off, but was involved in a serious car accident that resulted in a punctured lung and a shattered femur. Surgeons inserted a metal rod next to her femur to help it heal. Leah told her sister Kara that when she saw the truck that she hit pull out in front of her, she was certain she would die and felt born again after her recovery. She took some time off from college and decided that she wanted to live her life to the fullest. In the spring of 1999, just 3 weeks before she was scheduled to leave for Costa Rica for a field program in her university, Leah's father died. However, she decided to continue with the program regardless. Since she was leaving the country and no longer had living parents, Leah granted Kara, her sister, power of attorney over her bank accounts, where some money that she had inherited from her parents had been deposited. With her Spanish and anthropology degree almost in hand, Leah Roberts decided to leave school, despite encouragement from her brother Heath and sister Kara to stay for just 6 more months. She decided to drop out. Instead, she learned how to play the guitar, took up photography as a hobby, and adopted a kitten named Bia. Leah had been living off her inheritance for the time being. Her days were now spent in local coffee houses, writing in her journals about the meaning of life and forming new friendships along the way. She, along with her roommate Nicole Bennett and a friend named Jenny Quiller, began discussing the idea of emulating the famous Beat Generation writer Jack Kerouac by embarking on a road trip to the West Coast. On the morning of March 9th, in the year 2000, Leah talked on the phone with Kara about possible future plans. They made no commitments, but Kara recalls the conversation ending with the understanding that the two of them would be seeing each other very soon. Later, in the early afternoon, Leah and her roommate Nicole Bennett agreed to do some babysitting together the next day. The roommate went out to her job and returned later on in the day, at which point she noticed that Leah's 1993 white Jeep Cherokee was not there, nor Leah herself. Leah was not at a babysitting appointment either the next day and had not returned home. By the end of the following day, March 11th, not only was Leah still absent, but friends and family who had expected to see her had been calling the house trying to find her. On Monday, March 13th, her sister Cara reported Leah missing to Durham police. The following day, on March 14th, Leah's sister Cara, along with Leah's roommate Nicole, searched her room. A significant amount of Leah's clothes were missing, suggesting a planned, lengthy absence. She seemed to have taken her new cat Bea with her as well, and she had left a note stating that she was not suicidal and that she was the opposite of that. In the note, she reassured her sister and friends and mentioned her favorite author, Kerouac. Leah also indicated in the note that she would be returning home eventually. Along with the note, she had a bundle of cash left, approximately a month's worth of her share of the rent and other expenses. It was discovered that Leah had withdrawn several $1,000s on the afternoon of March 9th and then used her credit card to pay for a motel room near Memphis, Tennessee. Later transactions were of purchases of gas or food. Their locations suggested that Leah was traveling to the west along Interstate 40 and then north on Interstate 5 when she reached the I-40's western end in California. After a gas purchase shortly after midnight on the morning of March 13th in Brooks, Oregon, all activity on Leah's accounts ended. Leah's friend, Jenny Quiller, explained that Leah was struck by author Jack Kerouac's 1958 novel The Dharma Bums, in which the author had for a time worked as a U.S. Forest Service fire lookout on Desolation Peak in the northern Cascade Mountains of Washington. Leah had expressed interest in seeing that area for herself. Now, Cara was relieved to have discovered her sister's probable objective to visit Desolation Peak in the northern Cascade Mountains of Washington. Leah's bank accounts showed no new activity, but Cara had no reason to believe that something unfortunate had occurred at that point. She was expecting that Leah would call her on March 18th to wish her a happy 26th birthday. Instead, on that day, she received a call from the Durham County Sheriff's Office telling her to call one of their counterparts all across the country in Whatcom County, Washington State. She then learned that earlier that day, Leah's Jeep had been discovered in a remote forest, but Leah herself was not present. Apparently, in the early morning hours, a couple was jogging along Canyon Creek Road, a side route of the Mount Baker Highway near Canada-US border, and spotted scattered articles of clothing at the road's edge, some tied to trees and branches. Further down the steep embankment in the woods lay Leah's severely damaged Jeep. Investigators determined that the car had been traveling nearly 40 miles per hour when it left the road, yet there were no signs of an injury to an occupant of the vehicle, such as blood or shatter marks on the glass. This raised suspicions that the accident might have been staged or planned. Oddly, blankets and pillows were hung inside the Jeep's window, indicated it had been used as a shelter after the crash. Leah's belongings were scattered in the surrounding woods, including her passport, checkbook, driver's license, clothes, guitar, and CDs. Bits of cat food and a small cat carrier were found inside the vehicle, confirming that Leah had her cat Bea with her, although Bea was never found. Strangely, valuables such as $2,500 in cash and jewelry were left behind, ruling out robbery as a potential motive. Leah's brother Heath and her sister Cara flew to Bellingham to assist with the investigation. They visited the crash site, created flyers, and inquired at local businesses. They found a movie ticket from March 13th, which suggested that Leah might have spent a few hours in the city after having arrived at the beginning of that day following the 5 to 6 hour drive from where she had bought gas in Oregon. Near the movie theater was the mall's only sit-down restaurant, where Heath and Kara believed that Leah might have gone for a meal. Police were led to two customers, both men, who not only recalled Leah that day, but had also sat on each side of her at the restaurant's counter that day, talking about Kerouac and her plans. One of the men claimed that she had left with a man whom Leah referred to as Barry. The man also provided a description of this man named Barry for a police sketch to be made. Bizarrely, neither the other man nor any other customer who had been at the restaurant that day reported seeing this man, Barry. The FBI became involved due to Leah crossing state lines. Two pieces of evidence suggested a possible crime. First, the small amount of money that Leah had spent in Bellingham, and the discovery of her mother's engagement ring under a floor mat in her Jeep, a possession Leah treasured. Police conducted a 2-week search for Leah, but found no trace. Another chilling piece of evidence came out after security camera footage from the Oregon gas station was reviewed. This is the same gas station where Leah's bank account records stopped. In the footage, Leah appears to be unaccompanied and in good condition. However, for some reason she kept on glancing outside several times while waiting, possibly indicating that she was traveling with a companion. Shortly after Leah's Jeep was found, a man contacted the sheriff's office, claiming his wife had spotted Leah at a gas station in a nearby city of Everett, appearing disoriented. Despite the anonymous call, authorities considered the tip credible, believing it could be the last possible sighting of Leah Roberts. In 2001, the TV series Unsolved Mysteries featured Leah's case, generating new leads and reported sightings across the United States, but none were substantial. In 2006, new detectives reviewing the case discovered that the car had not been fully processed for evidence during the initial investigation. They found a wire cut under the Jeep's hood, suggesting the crash had been deliberate. The detectives also uncovered a fingerprint under the car's hood and some male DNA inside of the vehicle. The discovery of tampering with Leah's vehicle led police back to the man who claimed that Leah left the mall restaurant with the third man she called Barry, whom only that second man had reported seeing. The second man had worked as a mechanic and had a military background, further raising the detective's suspicions. He had also moved to Canada in the interim, complicating and lengthening the effort to get fingerprints and DNA from him. The fingerprint had turned out not to be a match, but detectives were still waiting on the DNA sample. Investigators continue to hope that the additional evidence that they collected will lead to a resolution of the case, although repeated searches of the area with dogs trained to sniff for corpses and with metal detectors that could find the metal rod in Leah's leg have failed to discover anything new.
I was kind of reading about this book that you mentioned, and I was checking if the main character committed suicide at the very end and what happened generally, because it seems like Leah is following the plot, right?
Yeah, Leah seems like she's trying to replicate the travels of that author, Jack Kerouac.
Yeah, so it seems like from the book, it seems like they traveled across America, that's a given, but there were no mention of suicide at all. At the very end, they just lived a normal life.
Yeah, I think that book is generally about, I guess, Adventure.
Yeah, nothing else.
Not having like material possessions or like trying to be closer to the nature.
Yeah.
Either way, what is your what are the first things that come to your mind when we discuss this case?
Well, at the very beginning, Leah seems to have met unfortunate circumstances, like with the family and all. But it seems like she started to, I don't know, live her life the way she wanted it. And in terms of like suicide in that aspect, I'm not leaning towards that. What do you think?
It's hard to say, and I guess we could break this case down and discuss some of the disturbing details. And I have a theory that might change your mind potentially.
Okay.
It might not necessarily be a suicide, but I don't think that there
A poetic
is.
end.
I don't think there is a good outcome in this case for Leah, per se. So, the first thing that kind of jumped to my mind was the fact that the broken windows of her vehicle had been covered with towels and cloth. And that's kind of an indication that someone had been living there potentially.
Do you think she lived there for a bit to be closer to nature?
But the car was completely mangled and her things were all over the place. And let's remember that some of the clothing were tied on trees.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. And if it's a homeless person or random person, wouldn't have that person taken what they can, like the ring,
The money?
The money, sold it somewhere else?
Exactly. I think if it was a passerby person,
Would have been ransacked.
it would have been ransacked, but seemed like the money was not taken. But it's strange because the vehicle apparently showed no signs of injuries, and apparently it was mangled. I couldn't find the image of the vehicle, how it looked, but I would assume that it's really unlikely to have no marks of a person. But then again, it's a Jeep. It's a Jeep Cherokee. It's kind of a bigger car. But yeah. But don't you find it strange? And what does that mean to us? Does that mean that she miraculously was able to kind of not get injured at all when her car was completely totaled down the embankment, and then she just put up towels there and lived there for a while, or at least for a night?
Possibly. I don't know. Everything is very mysterious in this case. Even the fact that she had plans and then had a sudden change of mind or drove across the US. It's just pretty bizarre, no?
It's definitely bizarre. What do you make about that detail about the one man who reported seeing Leah at the mall's restaurant leaving with another man that Leah referred to as Barry, but then nobody else in that restaurant remembers seeing this Barry? And the other only person who spoke to Leah actually told police that Leah left by herself. So you have one man saying that Leah left by herself, and then another man saying that Leah left with a man named Barry. And this other man even provided a detailed description.
Did they see her in the same day?
Yeah, at the same time. Literally at the same time. They were all, apparently she was eating at the counter of the restaurant. So maybe it's a situation where you kind of have to sit closer to other people when you're eating, and you're just, start the discussion.
Oh, that's really bizarre. Because in the book, there were two people who went on a journey together. So if she was with that Barry, it would make sense. But at the same time, what happened with the other witness who claimed that she was all alone?
Exactly. Another detail that jumped to my mind was the fact that from the investigation's information that they released, Leah only spent $100 out of the $2,500 she arrived in the area with. And this is considered very little amount of money to spend in that time frame.
When she was driving?
She was driving, yeah.
What about gas money?
Exactly. I'm not really sure regarding that detail, but it seems that she had spent very little money.
There could be someone with her.
Right.
Spending more.
Police came across her mother's engagement ring under the floorboard, which is, her family said that immediately jumped out as a huge red flag for them, because Leah would never remove that engagement ring because it reminded her of her late mother. Under what circumstance, in your opinion, would Leah remove the ring off of her finger and put it under the floor mat? Like, what kind of a scenario is this?
She was hiding it.
She was hiding it from someone?
Yeah. I mean, putting myself in her shoes, I would never take it off unless I wanted to protect it.
Alright, that actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Now, apparently, an anonymous man had called the law enforcement shortly after Leah's vehicle was discovered, and this man said that his wife potentially ran into Leah at a Texaco gas station in Everett, Washington. And Everett is a city in that general location, but it's kind of pretty far away from the mountain range where Leah was potentially heading towards. And Leah seemed to have been disoriented there. And police believe that it's a credible sighting. However, the anonymous caller had abruptly panicked during the call and ended the call for unknown reasons.
Oh, that's just weird.
Within 2 weeks of the Jeep's discovery, searches began on Mount Baker National Forest, beginning on Canyon Creek Road. An area was mapped out based on how far an injured person could travel on foot. Makes sense, right? After that, dogs and ground personnel and helicopters were brought in, and nothing was found, leading investigators to theorize that Leah either wasn't in the vehicle when it crashed or that she wasn't hurt in the incident. So there is no sign of Leah at all. But searching for a body in the foresty area is a very difficult task, so I wouldn't completely rule out that she's definitely not somewhere in that forest. But law enforcement claims that there was no footprints leading out of the vehicle.
Do you think she was attacked?
Now I'm starting to think that potentially Leah wasn't anywhere near the crash site ever. That whatever happened to Leah may have happened even before then, and now we're starting to think about a potential cover-up. Right?
Yeah, possibly. Possibly she was attacked in that town, and maybe she started walking around.
Yeah.
Got lost in the forest.
And that's also a potential outcome. Another thing that jumped out was the fact that her bank account details stopped in the town of Brooks in Oregon, in a gas station. And they were able to kind of review the security footage from inside of that gas station. And they were actually able to find Leah in the gas station. And she seemed normal and alone, but she kept looking throughout the door as if she was looking for something.
Being followed?
I don't think she was followed because it's a gas station. Probably, to me, maybe it seems more like she was potentially looking at a travel companion.
Okay.
Because we don't have footage from outside of the gas station. So we have no idea who's in the car. We just have footage of Leah herself. And then, obviously, the information that came out in 2006, the fact that apparently her car was tampered with, and then the subsequent suspicions that arose regarding that second man who reported Barry because he had a experience as a mechanic and in the military, and he moved to Canada. I mean, also Canada is literally right there, so maybe it's not that suspicious in this context, but at the same time, it's a very weird detail, right? That this guy reports seeing Barry, no one else sees him, and
Could this potentially be Barry?
yeah, he could be Barry.
Yeah.
He could be Barry. Alright, so given all of these suspicions that we have about this case, I kind of have a few questions. Maybe we could brainstorm a little bit. So my first question would be, do you think that Leah traveled with a second driver?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah. She spent so little money and she got from point A to point B in a fairly quick manner.
That's over 2,000 miles, I believe, and she got there in 3 days. So some people actually, and I, looked a little bit online to see what people think, and some people are claiming that this is, and even psychiatrists are claiming that this is a very clear example of a person experiencing mania.
Really?
Yeah, when you're experiencing mania, you don't need to take a break. You can just keep going. And apparently, this screams to some of them of a clear example of a person experiencing mania. And think about it. Leah, before she vanished, she didn't really indicate that she was going to go anywhere. She even made plans for the next day to do some babysitting activities, but then she kind of completely out of nowhere vanished. I think she may have been experiencing a manic episode that just kept going forever.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe she wanted to reach that peak as soon as she can.
Exactly. So she potentially was.
I still don't understand the gas money though.
The gas money, I have no idea how she was able not to spend that much money. Maybe along the way she kind of met someone.
Yeah, that's what I'm betting on as well, actually.
Yeah, for me, it kind of also leaves that option available. Do you think that Leah was in the car when it crashed?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, me neither, because there are no footsteps outside of the car, there's no blood. Her items are already kind of scattered, her ring is already under the floorbed, almost as if she may have placed that ring under the floorbed way before that accident even happened.
Yeah, if she was in the car and if she was injured, we wouldn't find that ring in there.
Yeah, exactly. So do you think it was a murder cover-up?
I don't think so. For some reason.
Do you think that anyone actually used the car as a shelter, or it was part of the staging?
That's a very good question. I'm not quite sure. What do you think?
I think it could be potentially
Cover?
a cover-up, and a more extensive cover-up, because there was male DNA inside of the car, a fingerprint under the hood also. So, lastly, do you think that Barry exists?
I'm very suspicious of that mechanic, ex-military guy.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah,
in
right?
this context, it seems like he's definitely a shady character.
The car was tampered with. He's very coincidentally a mechanic. He said there was a guy named Barry, ex-military. I don't know.
I did see an explanation how someone may have, as in to play devil's advocate for this mechanic, it could have been a case where maybe Leah invented Barry as a defense mechanism on the spot, and maybe the second man actually confused Barry with someone else. That's how he was able to kind of produce that detailed description. Like maybe he assumed, maybe she showed, Leah maybe showed it, like someone to him, like pointed it out. Oh, that's Barry, even though she may have not known who that person was.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly that guy was talking to her and she didn't want to appear to be alone.
Potentially, but also that's just a theory. Anything's possible. So for me, the way I'm leaning towards in this case, I feel like Leah was definitely not in the right mental space when she left her home in Durham. But she did make a note and everything, so maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it was possibly a spontaneous moment.
I think so. I think it was a spur of the moment decision wherein she was like, I want to do something meaningful. I want to do something different, something I would remember. And then she just jumped and drove.
Jumped in, started driving. I do think that she possibly met someone along the way.
Me too.
And I do think that something happened to her and someone knows what happened to her. Maybe it was foul play, maybe she was murdered, maybe it was an accident, maybe an overdose. And I think that's how she perished.
Do you think she was taking a legal substance?
I'm not really sure. I don't even know. But at the same time, I think that someone knows. Someone must know more. The only thing that's kind of weird to me is that potential last sighting of Leah.
Yeah.
That was weird to me.
That phone call was weird.
That phone call where the man kind of panicked and...
Do you think that was Barry?
I mean, that's a good question. Could that be Barry? Could the man reporting her sighting could be Barry?